Hello guys, welcome back to our channel and welcome back for another lecture in the subject matter Introduction to Criminology. For today's lecture, we will be talking about the uniform crime rate. So just a little bit of overview with regards to uniform crime rate. I believe this is a very much important program that the international community had developed in order for us to better understand the nature of criminality and in order for us to come up with a better crime prevention program. Okay? So without further ado, let's proceed to our discussion. During the early days, criminologists all over the world is facing the same problem in relation to coming up with collective data in relation to criminality. This problem is not only a problem that can be observed in our country, but as I've stated, it affects everyone in the nation. To better understand criminality, there is a need for us to conduct a lot of study and to base on to crime statistic as we discussed in the previous lecture that we conducted. However, the problem is that there is no uniformity in reporting crime incident. Therefore, internationally, we cannot conduct a study in order to understand the existence of criminality because the manner of reporting crime incident in every country is different. That is why in year 1929, when the International Association for Chief of Police convened together, they had discussed this problem, so they provided a solution for it, and what they have conceptualized is to come up with uniform crime reporting system. So with that program, Philippine National Police also had developed or adopted that program to come up with two solutions in addressing the same problem that was cited into that international convention. So what they developed is what we call the NCRS and the proper. NCRS stands for National Crime Reporting System, while proper stands for Police Regional Office Periodic Report. So with this two program that they had conceptualized, they aim to better understand or collect similar data from every provinces, from every regions in our country, for us to come up with a uniform data and for us to study and understand the different crime incidents that are transpiring in different parts of the country, with no longer worrying that the data that will be forwarded to the national government is different and varying from each other. So we're going to talk about these two programs one by one. NCRS, or the National Crime Reporting System, is a program that aims to determine the specific data regarding the details of the crime, the details of the victim, and as well as the details of the offender. So it aims to determine this information for us to have enough data to come up with the specific study in order to understand the nature of criminality, the nature of victimization, and the rampancy of crimes that are being committed. While the other program that was conceptualized by the Philippine National Police focuses on the questions that answer the 5 Ws, such as the what crime was committed, where was the crime was committed, who was the victim, why did the offender committed the crime, and it includes also the up-to-date information regarding the result of the investigation relative to the crime. So both of them have their own significant contribution for us to come up with a better understanding to the nature of criminality. While the other focuses on crime, the offender, and the victim, the other focuses on the different aspect, or shall I say the technical aspect of the nature of criminality. So they have their own strength to say. So the significance of an effective crime reporting is much appreciated when we are talking about gathering data and coming up with a better administrative or even operational program in relation to combating criminality as a problem. I can remember before that there is an argument with regards to whether we can consider criminology as a study of science or is it an art. So one of the personalities that disputed criminology as a science is the person who claimed that criminology cannot become a science because there is no universal definition of crime, meaning that crime is being defined by different nations, different regions, depending on to their custom, tradition, depending on to their belief, and so on. So there are instances wherein a certain crime might be punishable in a certain country, while it is not punishable in other. So with that, there is no uniformity on considering whether the act will be considered as a crime or not. That problem is also being faced by law enforcement agencies wherein some of the datas that are being forwarded to them might be lacking some information. And with that, we cannot come up with a better generalization or overview on the crime situation of the whole nation. So by having now this uniform crime reporting system, we have now, we will expect now to receive the same information coming from different regions, coming from different units of the government and law enforcement agencies. With all of this said, it will make the studying of the nature of crime in our country pretty much easier because the data that are being collected are the same with each other. So we have uniform way of reporting crime. So we can already generalize with regards to the situation, the crime situation of our country based from these data that are being forwarded. And if we can have a better understanding to the nature of criminality and the rampancy of criminality in our country, the more that the PNP organization will come up with a better prevention, crime prevention plan or crime suppression plan. So that is the significance of having a uniform crime reporting system in our country. It will enhance the planning and operation activities of the law enforcement agencies in order to provide solution for the existence of criminality. So as we go further, there is a need for us to familiarize ourselves with regards to the significant terms that are used in this lecture. So we are going to talk about them one by one. First is we have crime. Crime refers to either felonies or offense. We defined crime already in our previous lecture. We will now proceed to the crime volume. Crime volume talks about the number of crimes committed in a given area over a certain period. That usually is a combination of index and non-index crime. Index and non-index crime will be discussed later on. So to make it more easy to understand, there are classification of crimes based on how they are being used on crime reporting. So all of these crimes that are being recorded from the different stations, from the different regions and provinces are being combined with each other and they will form now the crime volume. So all of the crime reported in the country will be considered now as the crime volume. Population in the field of research pertains to the number of inhabitants in a given area. So population here is used as the number of individuals living in a certain area. So let's say, for example, the population of the place where you are in currently right now is about 500,000, then that would be your population. It is important for us to determine this because we are going to use the data regarding the number of population in computing the crime statistic of a certain area. Usually, the crime population is readily available on the website of the Philippine Statistic Authority or the PSA, formerly termed as the NSO. So the population can be taken, or the data regarding the population can be taken from this office. Now let's talk about the crime rate. Crime rate refers to the number of incidents, or specifically crime incidents in a given area over a period of time, computed for every 100,000 inhabitants. So we have there the formula on how you can get the crime rate. So it's pretty much easy to follow. You're just going to divide the crime volume to the total population, and the result will be multiplied into 100,000, as that's the baseline on how are we computing the crime rate. Then you have already the percentage of the crime rate in that area. So we're just going to take or to have an example, and you try to compute the crime rate of this specific problem that I included on my slide. So let's say, for example, the province of Nueva Vizcaya has 300,000 population. This is just for the sake of example. I don't know the total population of Nueva Vizcaya. And you have a crime volume of 23,000 annually. So try to compute the crime rate of Nueva Vizcaya for that specific year. So if we're going to follow the formula, we will get at least 7.66%. So the crime rate, in that manner, we can consider that the crime rate in this province is pretty much low, but we don't know yet until we compare that to the national average. So if the national average, meaning the country itself, where this province is located, has less than 7% crime rate, then we can now consider that Nueva Vizcaya is indeed not a safe place to live in if the crime rate of this province is higher than the national crime rate of the entire Philippines. That is with regards to crime rate. It is important to determine the crime rate, as we made mention, because we can determine if that place is really safe to live in, or are there a lot of crimes being committed in there. So these are the things that we are looking upon when it comes to researches. Since we are getting the idea on how safe is the area, how safe is that place for a person, maybe if you are a business person and you wanted to try to put a business on that place, having a crime rate higher than the national crime rate, then I don't think that would be beneficial on your part, especially if you're a businessman or so on. There are a lot of things that the crime rate will matter, especially in inviting investor in our country, especially in gaining support from the international community and many more. So usually there's a need for us to lower the crime rate, because this will show that this will impact the province or the community or even the country negatively. But there are instances that the crime rate does not usually reflects the entirety of the situation, because crime rate is based on the number of crime that are being reported. And it is a common knowledge that not all crime is actually being reported. So those are the possibilities that we might take into consideration, because there are instances that even if the crime rate is pretty much low, if you visit the place, then you can observe that there are a lot of things that are really going on that does not reflect on the researches or statistic that they have. So there are possibilities still that a certain country or a certain place might possess a very low crime rate, but then in reality, the data are being manipulated. Okay, let's continue with regards to the significant terms. We have here index crime. Index crime pertains to crimes that are serious in nature and they are being committed in a sufficient frequency and regularity, meaning that these are the types of crime that are usually being committed in that area. Our country had listed some of those crimes, like for example, we have murder, physical injuries, homicide, we have rape, we have carnapping. These are listed as the index crime because a lot of crimes that are being committed falls under this category. So those crimes that are usually being committed by criminals, they will be listed as index crime. And those crimes that are less likely being committed by criminals will be labeled as non-index crime. So you notice under the crime volume, regardless if they are listed as index crime or non-index crime, they are still part of the crime volume, meaning they still affect the crime rate of a certain area. Now let's talk about solved cases. Solved cases pertains to cases wherein the offender had been already identified and there is an enough or sufficient evidence that was collected by the investigator in order to prosecute the case, and the offender was already arrested or taken into custody, and there was a formal charge against him in either to the prosecutor's office or to the proper court. So if those elements are already present, then we can consider that already as a solved case because the law enforcement organization has no longer control over it. Their participation in that incident, in that crime, is already finished. Therefore, they will already mark that as a solved case. There are instances also wherein some of the elements are not fulfilled because of incidents that are beyond the control of the police officer. So let's say, for example, you have arrested the person already, you have collected enough evidence, and you have filed the case already, but then the victim suddenly retreats his case against that person, then those things are already beyond your control. Therefore, it will still be marked as a solved case in favor of the police officer. Another instances is wherein the offender can no longer be prosecuted because maybe he died. If the offender had already died, so there is no more to be prosecuted. So that will be labeled also as a solved case. Now let's talk about the crime solution efficiency. Under crime solution efficiency, this measures the efficiency of the police officer in solving cases. Therefore, under the formula, it reflects there the solved cases divided by the crime volume. Then you multiply that to 100 to get the percentage of the solved cases based on the crime volume. So if we're going to follow that, we might be able to compute the following problem. Again, let's talk about the province of Nueva Vizcaya, and let us assume that in a certain period of time, there are 6,000 cases that were solved from the 23,000 crimes that has been committed in that same period. So if we're going to compute crime solution efficiency of the PNP Nueva Vizcaya, we will come up with a 26.08% crime solution efficiency. If that is high or low, depending on the national average. Okay? So, but we must consider that the nearer you are to 100%, then the more effective you are in solving crime and criminality. However, we might not forget that there are some factors that affects also the possible solution of the crime. There are incidents wherein the problem is really within, not within the law enforcer, but either the situation itself makes it hard to solve that specific case, or other factors. So those are the consideration that we must look upon also in looking into these figures. So we should not always focus onto the figures, but we might try also to determine what are the possible problems that were encountered in efficiently solving criminality. Then we also have the term cleared cases. The case is considered cleared if at least one of the offender were already arrested and there is enough evidence to prosecute that person or to file a case to that person. So they are different from solved and cleared, because cleared, the offender is already been identified or arrested, and there is yet a sufficient charge, or there is already a sufficient evidence to file a case against him. Does not mention there whether or not the case was already formally filed or other elements of considering whether that is solved or cleared case. So in relation to cleared case, we're going to talk about the crime clearance efficiency. This is in relation to the number of cleared case based on the crime volume that occurred in that specific time. So crime clearance efficiency is measured by the formula that I presented on the slide. We have there the number of cleared cases over the crime volume, then multiply that to 100 to get the percentage. So if we're going to follow that same formula, we might solve the problem that I am going to present to you. So let's say, for example, Nueva Vizcaya, there are 23,000 reported cases in a certain period, and PNP Nueva Vizcaya roughly cleared 8,000 of those cases. Now let us try to compute the crime clearance efficiency of PNP Nueva Vizcaya following the formula I presented on the previous slide. So we might come up with the answer 34.78%, which is, I can consider that already as a high since it's near the 50% mark. If higher than that, then definitely the more that the PNP organization is becoming efficient in the performance of their duties, especially in clearing cases. Those are the things that we must be familiar with in terms or in relation to uniform crime reporting. So I do hope that you learned something from this discussion. If there are cases or there are issues that are not clear to you yet, please feel free to comment those down on the comment section and I will try to provide the answer as soon as I can. So that's it for today. See you on the next video.